Hey everyone, welcome to Naval Theater. I'm Curious Mirage, looking at the ships, people, events, and theory that make maritime history so fascinating. Leroy Grumman founded his aircraft manufacturing company in 1929, beginning operations in January of 1930. The first Grumman fighter entered service with the U.S. Navy in 1933, the FF, nicknamed Fifi. This was developed into the F4F and later the F4F, all biplanes that served during the last years of that type's deployment. The F4F-2 was the Grumman entry in the 1940 competition for the next generation of carrier fighter. Originally designed as a biplane, it was revamped as a monoplane when it became apparent that biplanes could no longer compete with the new monoplane designs. It lost initially to the Brewster F2A Buffalo due to inferior maneuverability. But with disappointment in the Buffalo mounting, Grumman revamped the design, giving it new wings and tail, and the Pratt & Whitney R1830 Twin Wasp replacing the old engine. The F4F-3 was soon in production. The first F4Fs to go into combat were British. Called Martlet in the Empire, the first deliveries were originally intended for the French, but after June 1940, they were delivered instead to the British. Greek and Belgian orders fared similarly. The first combat kill by a Martlet was on 25 December 1940, and they scored their first aerial victories from a carrier in September 1941, shooting down FW-200 Condors during convoy escort operations. American F4Fs, called Wildcats, had their baptism of fire on 7 December. 9 were destroyed on the ground at Pearl Harbor. American carriers were only recently going operational with the new fighter, and they had a steep learning curve against the Mitsubishi A6M0. However, they still performed well. At Wake Island, VMF 211, equipped with just 5 Wildcats, 7 were lost in a surprise airstrike on 8 December, fought the Japanese invasion hard, even sinking the destroyer Kisaragi with a lucky hit to her depth charges. They racked up several kills before they were overwhelmed. The Wildcat pilots had to combat the Zero with superior tactics. Navy ace-to-be John Jimmy Thatch developed the most famous counter, the Thatch Weave. Pairs of Wildcats would cross each other's flight paths, drawing enemy fighters across their wingman's guns. Thatch combat tested the maneuver at the Battle of Midway, 4 June 1942, and the maneuver is still taught today. Wildcat pilots could also count on their fighter to absorb serious damage. Legendary Japanese ace Sakai Saburo recounted one Wildcat he jumped. I had full confidence in my ability to destroy the Grumman and decided to finish off the enemy fighter with only my 7.7mm machine guns. I turned the 20mm cannon switch to the off position and closed in. For some strange reason, even after I had poured about 500 or 600 rounds of ammunition directly into the Grumman, the airplane did not fall, but kept on flying. I thought this very odd. It had never happened before, and closed the distance between the two airplanes until I could almost reach out and touch the Grumman. To my surprise, the Grumman's rudder and tail were torn to shreds, looking like an old torn piece of rag. With his plane in such condition, no wonder the pilot was unable to continue fighting. A Zero which had taken that many bullets would have been a ball of fire by now. Wildcat remained the primary U.S. Navy fighter until mid-1943, when the new F6F Hellcat became readily available. Grumman ceased production in early 1943 to concentrate on the Hellcat, and General Motors took over Wildcat production, and it remained in service throughout the war. Wildcats were primarily operated from escort carriers, since the F6F was too large for them. As such, they played a key role in convoy defense in the Atlantic, and Wildcats scored the final Royal Navy kills over Norway in March 1945. They also participated in the final carrier strike in Europe on 5 May. In the Pacific, Wildcats would see combat from their jeep carriers in the Philippines, staring down the Japanese fleet in the action off Samar, 25 October 1944, when they even strafed the super battleship Yamato. Several Wildcats also scored air-to-air victories off Okinawa. 7,860 Wildcats of all makes were built by the time production finally ended in 1945. 15,553 combat missions were logged by U.S. Navy and Marine Wildcats alone, with only about 1,500 flown from land bases. Wildcats racked up 1,327 aerial kills to only 202 combat losses. Today, only about 44 survive, with 19 airworthy or being restored to flying condition. Before we wrap, I've got to show you this little gem. This is the F4F 3S Wildcat fish. Someone got the bright idea to strap a couple floats to an F4F so they could operate it in areas without air bases. However, the Seabees could slap together airfields really fast, and the floats degraded maneuverability and top speed too much, so only one was converted. Thanks for watching! If you have a question, leave a comment and I'll try to answer them. I have some suggestions for further reading here. And I hope you'll join us next time when I look at the torpedoes of World War II.